everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Steven Stark, and with me this week, longtime co-host, Nessie. But y'all know her. You probably know these folks as well, but maybe not as well. Christine from the Nevernever Podcast.
Hello.
And Bronty from the internet.
Yes.
Both have been on the channel in the past, but it's been a little while for you, Bronty. Christine, it was more recently with you. We did what? The Never-Ending Story?
We did. And the Highlander.
And we did Highlander as well before that. So you're becoming my go-to, like, when it's an 80s movie. Let's call Christine, and she'll come talk about any 80s movie.
Heck yeah.
And Bronty, to be honest, I don't remember what I've had you on for.
I think Cobra Kai might have been the last one.
Oh, right.
Ooh, Cobra Kai.
That was a good show.
Yeah.
But we're here today to talk about Back to the Future with Marty and Doc Brown. I love this movie, and I forgot about how great it was until I rewatched it. And I was just like, yep, there's a reason why everybody says the 80s is the best decade for films. Like, I say that, other people say that, and this is just another example of it. I hadn't seen it in a few years. I rewatched it today, and, since I've started doing this with movies, I watched it with a more critical eye, but I found it difficult to do that with this film because I'm just grinning and having fun the whole time. So I couldn't get out of my own way and be critical in the way I am with other films. Anyway, that's enough about me. Let's have our guests tell us how they felt, because I'm sure you both rewatched it this week. Is that correct?
Yeah, I watched it yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too. I felt the same way that you did, Stephen, and I think there's something good about that. I mean, I think that I did make a lot of notes, and I think that there are sort of critical things that that I could say, and maybe we'll talk about all the different things. But I have to say, I think that the number one thing to do in this sort of thing and rewatching and kind of preparing to talk about a movie is to try to get the actual feel from the movie that people generally get. And people don't usually watch movies as critics. They watch movies to enjoy them, especially a movie like this. And so, I think it was a good thing, not a bad thing, that you and I and probably everyone, in rewatching this, the principal thing that we felt was the wonder of it that you're supposed to feel when you watch this movie.
Joy of movie going.
Yeah, I definitely had to stop myself because I had to pause the movie and go back a couple of times because I realized that I hadn't taken a note in like 20 minutes. I'm like, oh no, I've forgotten things. So I had to go back. I've got my external brain again for
whatever works for you. It's been working for you so far. That's why I've asked you back, Okay, Nessie, when did you rewatch it?
Oh, I rewatched it today. I like to have it fresh in my mind.
Yeah, no, I do the same thing. I always watch it.
It
the
is.
Day of.
And Back to the Future is a quintessential 80s movie.
Yes, it is.
It has everything. It has big budget, special effects, cool car. You've got product placement. You've got the cool kids. You've got that. Even 50s nostalgia was a thing in the 80s. My generation, we would have 50s themed dances, and everybody would come dressed up like we saw in Back to the Future, or some of the other nostalgic films that call back to the 50s. For some reason, it was like an iconic thing for us. This was our parents' generation when our parents were teenagers. I lived the 80s. I was the 80s. So this is very much my wheelhouse.
Yeah. I see your pun there, Potter.
Yeah. It is a timeless movie. It gives you the nostalgic feels.
But the thing is, it's not really timeless. It's all about time.
It's a classic. It is a classic.
So I'll ask you this. Since it's a movie about time, did anybody take notice of what time things happened?
Why would I do that?
What time does the movie start?
Oh man.
What is it?
It was like 8 o'clock in the morning, wasn't it?
Well, so Doc Brown has the clock set to be 25 minutes slow. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So the clock says 8 when it's 8:25, and that's why Marty is late for school for the fourth day in a row. But you're asking when it starts, so it must start before that.
You're right.
Yeah.
Look, the lawyer is going to figure it out. You're like digging down for the clues. I got
It starts at 8 o'clock, 8 a.m.
It's got to start a little earlier than that. But I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly when. You tell us, Stephen.
It starts at
and they met in the parking lot at 1:15 in the morning.
But that's later. Yeah,
that is later. And like people do know some of the times in the chat as well. But the movie starts, the clock says 7:53, so it starts at 8:18 in the morning.
Nice.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Thank you for being chronologically pedantic.
I mean, look, it's math. Give it to me, please. You know, like,
you can do
math guy.
all the time puzzles, Steven. I mean, if a DeLorean leaves a parking lot at 1:15 a.m.
at 88 miles an hour,
and going 88 miles an hour, and arrives in 1955, you know, what time was the clock set for? How long does it take? It's instantaneous. It takes 30 years. How does it work?
Right. How does it work? Anyway,
Redhead.
I love that they started it off with a time gag where there's a little bit of math involved, and like this movie goes. It's just so good from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the weird opening sort of pan across all of Doc's weird stuff set up on his
Rube Goldberg alarm clock, coffee and breakfast starter and dog feeder combo.
Cow can dog food, man. I haven't seen that in a long time.
Cow can take me away.
Oh man!
Wait a minute, that's the wrong product. Never mind.
That's the wrong one.
But it works so well. It's constructed masterfully. So like there's three things that I will say about this movie. One, its premise is ridiculous.
Yes.
Which is fine. Number two, its science is actually terrible. Like quite bad.
Yeah.
Number three, its storytelling is damn near perfect.
Yes.
So like it's one of those like don't ask too many questions, don't dig too deep, you know.
Right, not in the science aspect.
Right, but if you will just suspend your disbelief and go for the ride, man, what a fantastic story.
Yeah, the thing that I love about that whole, like you said, this sort of dichotomy of like bad science, amazing storytelling is like how jam-packed it is. I think I've mentioned before on here about mercenary efficiency, where you've got like every moment has some detail, some plot device, some Chekhov's item where you have to keep track of things and it shows what's going to happen later in the film, or it references something that happened earlier in the film, and it's all like interwoven really, really well.
Yeah. I have a bunch of thoughts about this. First of all, Stephen, would you say there's a gigawatt of bad science in the movie?
1.21.
Yeah.
Doc Brown keeps saying gigawatt instead of gigawatt. One of and there are a million, but that's not even the bad science that Stephen's talking about. I definitely love Christine's point about the mercenary efficiency. I thought the whole movie feels like it's cut from the same block of stone. It's like it's so tight, so perfect in the storytelling, just like Stephen said, which is interesting because it's ambitious to do that for a movie that kind of cuts across a lot of genres and has a lot of different sorts of things going on. It's a fantasy movie, obviously, and there's some action adventure. It's also very much a romantic comedy about the getting together of George McFly and Lorraine, and there's even like some serious violence and crime in the movie. I mean, the murder of Doc Brown at the beginning is horrifying,
right?
And also the
murder of
what happens to Lorraine later.
That's just what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that is a vicious, brutal thing at the beginning and end of the movie. And so it's got all these different kinds of elements, and yet it just blends them so seamlessly and effortlessly and perfectly. I will say, along the lines of like thinking with a super critical hat on, which people shouldn't and don't do in watching this movie, I actually think there are a couple of scenes they could have maybe done without. As tight as it is, it could have been maybe even a tiny bit tighter. I think I could have done without the thing about Marty convincing George to ask Lorraine to the dance by going into the radiation suit and blasting music into him, and also Peabody. Also, Peabody shooting at Marty, I think, was not really necessary. But anyway, just those two.
Yeah, I agree with you, the Peabody, but the other one I respectfully push back on, because, I think the fact that George was this, aspiring sci-fi writer, the fact that he, it seemed like he kind of believed that these things were real too. Like, and not only were they science fiction, but they were like, realistic science fiction. And so for him to have that confirmed by this crazy person in a spacesuit and like music blasting into his ears, and like, I really enjoyed that. So whether or not it was necessary to the plot of the film, I think it added great character to it.
This is not strictly a sci-fi movie or an action adventure movie. It's got comedy enough that some of the scenes are there purely for the comedic purposes.
Right.
And I
like
think
the comedy of errors between Marty and his mom.
Right. So I think the thing at Peabody's farm and the thing with George, I think they both can work. It also sets up, he's got the 2 pine trees out there and he runs over one, and when he comes back it's Lone Pine Mall, not Twin Pines Mall. So like it sets up a gag for later in the movie as well.
Sure.
Yeah. They're not the strongest scenes in the film. They're not the part everybody thinks about when they start thinking about this movie. But I don't know. I still think they belong.
Yeah. So at the beginning, while it's showing that big pan of the Rube Goldberg machine, it also has all these sort of little hints and clues as to who Doc Brown is, which I thought were really, really cool, because you've got like the pics of Ben Franklin, and the other one next to it, I can't tell if it's Alexander Graham Bell or Thomas Edison. I'm going to guess Thomas Edison, because he's also like this incredible inventor and known inventor. And then it's also got, so he's a scientist, he's into inventing things because you see this crazy machine, but you also see the newspaper clippings of the his estate being sold to developers, and like the fact that he's bankrupt, which gives you a good like inroad as to why he started messing with these terrorists in the first place. And then of course you see the plutonium under the bed.
Right.
It's just sitting there. No problem.
Just hanging out.
Yeah.
Just hanging out, as you do.
See, I'm actually going to agree with Sean. Like, I thought this whole, like, your uncle is in jail thing, I thought the joke was pretty weak, honestly. And they set it up in the beginning so they can make a joke about a toddler.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
got the baby in the crib, and he just loves it in there. We just leave him in there all the time.
There are a few questionable things in this film, like, George pirating Lorraine's OnlyFans, through the window.
Right.
Interesting way to put it.
Was that Lorraine? I was wondering that. Okay.
Yes,
it happened in front of her house.
Yeah, I realized it was in front of her house, but you
could have been her neighbor across the way.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
It was Lorraine.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
he was totally keeping calm on her and pirating her OnlyFans.
I tried to find a funny way to say it, but like, not cool, George.
Yeah, no bueno.
No.
Right.
Those locker room shenanigans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the way Leah Thompson plays that there are a lot of interesting acting choices actually she has to make in the early scene in 1985, and that's one of them where I feel like she drops a hint of guessing that might have been why he was in the street. You know, she's like, "Why were you there anyway?" And there's a little bit of a look of recognition of maybe that was why, but then she lets it go.
Right.
Yeah. Do you think future George ever told her the truth? Like,
Oh,
Oh no.
successful
Yeah, I'm with you, Nessie.
no. No.
Fair enough.
Nessie, you don't think that the new George was confident enough in himself that he could have admitted that and apologized?
No. Oh.
Well, the new George.
New George.
The new George at the end.
Yes. OG
Probably.
George. Negative. He was taking that secret to the grave.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He like quickly changes the subject, you know.
Yes.
Oh, look, Jackie Gleason's on TV. You know? Oh, it's my favorite part.
Yeah, and I absolutely adored. Sorry about that, guys. I absolutely adored the way that she was acting so puritanical. It wasn't just that Marty said it. Like, we actually got to see it. Like, why would you call a boy? You can't call a boy, you know, like.
Move forward.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get to go back and see her in her, you know, teenage sort of natural state. And she's
wow, is she trying to live her best life?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Parking with boys.
Drinking
This isn't the first time I've parked. I'm almost 18, you know?
Right, and drinking out of a flask. Yeah.
Smoking
Right.
and got her fans only window shade open, just out there for the world, you know. Living
Right.
her best life.
Yeah, and it foils Marty's plan because he's going to do this horrible thing in order to get George to save her from him. But one of the reasons that he can't do it, one is he can't bring himself to do it, but another is that she wants to, you know, make out with him.
Yeah.
I had a thought about the early. Oh, go ahead, Nessie. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, then they had that like edible angst going on right there at the end. Like, I feel like she says, this is weird for some reason. I feel like I'm kissing my brother, and he's like, oh, they're just having all that, oh,
Yeah.
you know.
The look on Marty's face, this sort of like, crazy, I can't handle this.
That's a huge theme all throughout the movie as soon as he goes back, pretty much, because right away she's taking care of him.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's coming on to him in all these ways, not so subtle ways.
Except instead of trying to kill his father, you know, he's trying to.
Exactly. He's trying to exactly.
Get his dad to get together with his mom so that he can be alive. And it's sort of like a weird reverse Oedipal kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. That's a good way to put it. I had a thought about that since we were talking about that early scene in 1985 when the family is together. I had a thought about that scene. So the structure of the movie is dependent on this idea that they want to say to you, okay, the family is one way at the beginning in 1985. Bad, basically negative, and then good, and then good at the end of the movie, because what's changed is Marty has changed the past, obviously, and that's helped the family. There's something that sort of struck me that I thought was interesting about this. I don't mean this as a criticism. You could make it as a criticism, but I mean it more as an observation that I think is interesting to me. In watching it again, what struck me was how good the family actually is in the beginning in 1985. Yeah. They are very kind to one another, very close-knit, very loving. Really, all of them get along very well. There's a lot of love between George and Lorraine and the siblings with each other and the parents and the children. What's different at the end is not really anything like that. What's different is just that they're wealthier. And arguably the makers of the movie maybe unwittingly said something about their own era, which is the 80s, that Ronald Reagan, greed is good 80s, you know, what really matters is money and career success. So that's just a thought I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
That's more than a thought. I literally was going to bring up the very similar idea that, like, the dichotomy between old 1985 and new 1985 is like the new family they're more financially set, but like, are they better off? Like,
Right.
I always wear a suit to the office. Oh, so you're a corporate slave then?
Corporate too. Yeah.
Like,
What happened to the happy-go-lucky guy and the tie-dyed T-shirt just being all goofy?
Yeah.
What happened to him? He got uptight and I'm proper now. I'm not a slacker.
The thing that I liked about all the changes that happened, like whether you think about it like deeply morally, if it's better or worse or whatever to be more well off, the thing that I liked about it was that all of that success for them came from George's confidence and like this seeming better dynamic between him and Lorraine, where they were obviously in love. They were, giving each other spanks and just playing around and sitting together with their arms around each other and all this kind of thing. So it came from confidence and self-confidence, and it came from love. And I really like the fact that because she could kind of look up to him after that punch. She's like, oh, this is my protector, whereas in the original reality nothing like that had happened.
She was his nursemaid, and she felt sorry for him. She literally said, I just felt sorry for this guy. Mm-hmm. And that's where their relationship started from.
Right.
That was the other interesting acting choice that Leah Thompson had to make in the early scene. She has this interesting line where they're talking about Uncle Joey, who's in jail, and they and so they say something. I think like the daughter says, "Oh, it's so embarrassing to have an uncle who's in jail," and Leah Thompson, the mother, says something like, "Well, we all make mistakes in life," or something like that. And she's got an interesting acting choice where is she gonna indicate that she's thinking about herself, right? She does glance at George when she says that, and George is, does she feel it was a mistake to marry him? But I think she mostly, although maybe there's the tiniest undercurrent of that, she mostly doesn't really play it that way, because then very soon after that, she's talking about the enchantment under the sea dance and how they fell in love, and she's really, she clearly feels a lot of love for him.
I think you mean the fish under the sea dance.
Nice.
So anyway, I think she loves him very much, even at the beginning. But though I definitely agree with the two of you that she feels a lot more respect for him and a kind of more of a well-rounded love for him at the end.
Yeah. She finds him more exciting, as a person. So.
Okay, so that is a real argument to be made. Like, they're not Necessarily better off. They're Hollywood shorthand for better off.
True. True.
But like, I have no doubt that wealthy George McFly still votes Republican.
He's got
I'm sorry, that joke just totally derailed my own brain.
So there was something that I noticed about that conversation. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just said, they're members of the Rotary Club. They were all playing golf, so they're members in good standing down at the country club.
Yeah. There was just one little thing that I noticed about that conversation where she was talking about the Under the Sea dance, where she mentions in that moment, that early on, the night of the dance was the same night as the big thunderstorm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's setting it up from super early. It wasn't just that woman, save the clock tower and give us your cash. It was like early, really early, that they started to set that up, which I thought was really smart. That's good storytelling. So, like I said, every moment is a detail or a callback or something. So,
which just ties into what Bronty was saying about it's all chiseled from the same stone. Everything belongs. Everything makes sense. Even the callback to like skateboarding and stuff.
Right. Yeah. It was
really cool. What's the callback to skateboarding?
Well,
Marty has a
basically
skateboard.
invents skateboarding in 1955 after we see him being a skateboarding
Oh, for sure. Yes,
enthusiast.
for sure. I just didn't realize if there was a specific thing
Right.
that you were
Well,
referring to.
there's a lot of those. It's not just that. There's all these like closed time loop kind of things where the inventing what you just said, skateboarding, inventing or sort of having, like, he learned from the past, but then in the past they learned from him that song Johnny Be Good, and then there was another one with like the whole time travel thing in the first place where he hit his head, and the only reason why he associated that picture with the time travel is because Marty was there to tell him that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all this circular, like, where does it actually come from?
You ready for a very hard piece of trivia?
Ooh, go for it.
When he shows the picture, you can see what he has written next to it. And it's not flux capacitor.
Right.
Though I did notice that. Was it? I'm going to get it wrong. I'm not even going to guess. Was it like?
I stopped and wrote it down.
Okay. Was it three? Was it 3 words?
No, it just said flux compressor.
Oh.
Flux compressor. Interesting.
But flux capacitor is just such a better. It rolls off the tongue so much better.
Agreed.
And people might not understand temporal science, but everybody has heard of a flux capacitor, and that's what makes things work.
Flux capacitor, fluxing.
Yes, in the flux or something. I just wanted to give like one moment of special shout out to that fucking speaker at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that speaker was so huge. It was bigger than Marty.
Ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
It was.
It reminded me of that Bose commercial where
the
Bose commercial, the guy's just sitting there with his
tires flapping.
Just having his hair blown back by this massive.
This is also an 80s thing, that commercial.
Very much an 80s thing.
You're right.
Yeah.
There's an interesting theme in the movie of stuff not working, because it's this movie about like these incredible scientific achievements and discoveries, technological advancements, like time travel, the success of Doc Brown and figuring this out, and yet. So there's the guys, the guns of the Libyans. They're going to kill Marty as well as Doc Brown, but the guns don't work. And Doc Brown, before that, he has his own handgun that doesn't work. Then obviously, in a huge way, that the car always doesn't work, right? Including at the climactic moment. Marty has to hit his head on the car to get it to start, and at other times he can't get the car to start. Like when he first goes back, the car doesn't start, and he's sort of stranded out there.
Right, and then it doesn't work right when he was, right when he needed it at the very end. It started not working.
Exactly. And then, as you point out, Christine, there's the thing at the beginning where it sort of blows up or it breaks because he puts her and everything up, and it's not just Marty's fault because Doc Brown calls him and says. There's a glitch in the thing, it's not going to work. It's going to mess up. And Doc Brown also, there's another example where I think he makes a comment about how, right. Marty goes back to and sees Doc Brown, and initially Doc Brown is working on this thing to read minds, and it fails completely.
Put a pasta strainer on top of his head.
Right. And Doc Brown says, and he says, you know what this means? It means this damn thing doesn't work at all. So that idea, this damn thing doesn't work at all, is everywhere in the movie, which is interesting given that it's a movie about the great success of technology.
Yeah. And I will say you. Oh, go ahead, Christine.
For every success, there's 1,000 failures. For the one success.
Yeah, there was one thing about what you mentioned at the beginning of that whole thing. Bronty, John, I don't know how you want to be referred to.
Both are good. I like both. I like John.
So, okay, John. So back in the 80s and 90s, I don't know, maybe you guys have noticed this or not, but before 9/11, there was this huge, awful, racist stereotype of Middle Eastern people being incompetent. And in many, many movies, the other one that I can think of right now is True Lies, where they couldn't get the camcorder to work to make their video, their angry video, or in this one where the guns don't work and then their car doesn't work, and then but the thing that I like about this film, like you said, is that it's ubiquitous throughout the entire thing. It's not just them. They took that stereotype and just ran with it and gave it to everybody, so it didn't matter anymore. And like that was something that I really enjoyed.
Yeah. About the guns not working, a revolver is going to work.
Right.
And an AK-47 is ubiquitous around the world because of how easy to use and how reliable it is.
Yep. Nessie, that's why Harry Dresden uses one.
Right, because it's not going to jam.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's mechanical. It just works.
Yep.
Well, I was in the Army. Our weapon of choice at the time was the M16. And it was a fine weapon. I mean, you could hold it up to your chin and pull the trigger, and you'd just be like, there's almost no recoil to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it requires a high degree of keeping it clean, keeping it in good repair. Whereas an AK, you can just drag it through the mud.
Right.
There's no reason for it not to have worked. But I didn't pick up on that, Bronty, where there is a theme of like, there's a lot of unreliable things going on with a lot of the technology.
Yeah, and then of course that whole thing at the end with the plug that didn't work. He finally got it up there, and then it came apart over there, and it's just nothing worked.
Yeah, anybody who's ever strung up some Christmas lights outside their house knows the trouble, the pain that Doc Brown was feeling in that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and real quick thinking by him. I guess you'd expect it from Doc Brown. The genius move of coiling up the thing and hanging it on the hand of the clock. That was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right there.
And when he went down, at least he was wearing gloves. Like, I still don't think that the gloves would have been quite enough. He really should have had something hanging over it. But still, he wasn't barehanded, which I've seen in films before. And I'm like, argh!
Yeah. Rope burn on your hands? No thanks.
Yeah. Well, and then it wasn't even rope. It was like
cable
wire. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
the worst.
Right. And then the other thing was like the whole in the beginning when you see the town as Marty's going through it to get to school, and then later when you see it when he comes back, everything's kind of dilapidated, and there's like none of the buildings are being used for what it originally wanted to be used for. Like the diner had turned into some exercise studio, and the movie theater had turned into like a ministry kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a church, and then rated R theater was
right. Yeah, and then they go back to 55, and the village is perfect. It's like everything is clean. There's perfect grass. The clock tower works, and like everything is lovely. And then you get the Mayor Goldie Wilson character who starts out sweeping the soda shop, and he says to him, "Yeah, Mayor, I could be mayor. I'm gonna clean up this town." And then he becomes mayor later, and the town has just gone to shit, which makes me sad. But that's the reality of the movie.
That's so interesting, and I wonder if they even thought about that, because the joke they're making about clean up this town was with
right,
exactly right. Also, you notice that Progress is his middle name was said about the mayor in 1955 and the mayor in 1985.
Right,
I did. Progress.
Yeah. But that's a really good point, Christine. That that he's going to clean up this town. The town isn't cleaned up. Nessie, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, that's the two dichotomies through the whole movie is nostalgia and progress. These are the two things that are just constantly bouncing back and forth off of one another through this whole movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good observation. So, the other thing that I don't know if you guys knew, the actor who plays George McFly,
Oh yeah.
also played Grendel in the Beowulf movie.
He played Grendel.
Oh yeah,
he played Grendel in the Beowulf movie.
You're talking about Crispin Glover.
Yes. Thank you. I couldn't remember his name.
Can I just say, sometimes I look at him and I'm like, that is a beautiful man.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I look at him and I'm like, meh. But sometimes, certain angles, I'm just like,
it's the bone. It's the bone structure.
Yeah, I'm just like,
and his eyes, they're like such a beautiful blue. And then, though I have to say, in certain angles, he looks super creepy as well.
Well, I mean, he's the same guy that was cutting the hair off of the angels and Charlie's Angels. The creepy guy just come out of nowhere. Yeah.
And you ever see
creepy?
It was in a movie called Willard, which is about a weird guy obsessed with his pet rat.
Interesting. I don't think I ever caught that one
with us about that, but
so he plays creepy well, also. Yeah.
Yeah, and his character in this movie was not necessarily creepy, all except for the whole OnlyFans thing, but he was weird. He was a really weird dude. He had a strange cadence in the way he spoke. He had, he was very kind of spacey sometimes, no pun intended, with all of his sci-fi love going on. But he was a little spacey. Like, he couldn't really remember how he was going to end a sentence. And
it's like, get it out, George.
Yes. Yeah, it was a little bit like
he really plays that beating around the bush to say something just to the hilt. I guess that's like supposed to emphasize his lack of confidence because he doesn't seem to speak that way.
Right.
In 85 2.0.
Right. Yeah, he's very confident.
Fluid speech, yeah.
Right.
And he pursued his dream and became a published author, and because back then they didn't have self-publishing, so you had to like really get in there.
Yeah.
So that was an accomplishment.
Right. And it's interesting. That's clearly a theme in the movie because they tie it to Marty at the beginning. He doesn't want to pursue his music career because he's afraid of rejection.
And it's the exact same thing. I don't think I could take that kind of rejection.
Exactly. And there's that nice moment, with Michael J. Fox back in 1955 when George says to him, Barney says, "Oh, I didn't know you did something creative. Why don't you try to get people to read the stories?" And George says, "I don't think I could take that kind of rejection." Just what, as you say, just what Marty had said to his girlfriend at the beginning. And George says something like, "That probably doesn't make any sense, or you probably don't understand that at all." And Marty is like, "Actually, I do." Yeah. And that's a nice sort of father-son moment, even though, of course, only one of them knows that it's a father-son moment.
Right. And they have a couple of those moments, and like later in the film, towards the end, he's talking about, well, I'm going to take on all of that advice you've given me, Marty, and it's but I'm your son, and it doesn't work that way. So it was funny.
I love
give me a milk.
This line.
Chocolate.
Give me a milk. Chocolate.
That was a great line.
Great line. And also it comes flying down the counter to him like 1 second.
Hard stuff.
Flying on the spot.
An interesting thing about George McFly is that even before we have kind of updated George at the end, where you're right, he's so weird the whole time, and there's so many things that are going badly for him. Biff is bullying him in the future and in the past. But nonetheless, the interesting thing about it is how happy George is all along, right? George doesn't seem bothered by the fact that he's super weird and uncool in the beginning of 1985. He's, as Nessie said, he's laughing hysterically at the TV show. Exactly. So weird. Exactly. Right. And even when Biff bullies him, both in the past and in the future, he laughs it off. He seems to not be nearly as bothered by all these things that are going against him as you'd sort of expect. So he's an interesting and strange guy in a lot of ways, but in some respects strange in ways that benefit him.
Yeah. Well, he knows what he likes, and he's not afraid to love it.
Yeah. That's I mean, he's a good character. He's very well rounded in that way, where he's obviously got his flaws, but at the same time, he's obviously got these other good things going for him, and that is a mark of a good character. And it's the same with Marty. You know, Marty's a lot more confrontational, a lot less timid, but he's still like sucker punches, and he still, you know, kind of underhandedly wins these fights, like trips the guy.
Look,
and all
I've
that
said it
stuff.
before, and I'll say it again. Fair fights are for suckers.
Fair enough. And so before we get too far afield, I wanted to mention something. So in the beginning, when he's doing the test on the DeLorean with Einstein the dog, and he pulls him in and he synchronizes the watches, and he, you know, sends him off, and in exactly 1 minute he comes back. Well, 'twas timed, and the conversation between the two of them while they're waiting for him to come back took just over a minute and a half. So if anybody was wondering, and it wasn't due to like cuts where things were happening simultaneously, you know, it was just whole conversation the whole way through. And so for us, it took a minute and a half. For the two of them, it took 1 minute, and for the dog, it took an instant. And that's movie time for you.
I'm really glad you said that. And that's right.
Look, time is relative.
You're right. I think I've got 3 more things a little bit like that. Yeah. So one, now yours is much more perfect than the first one I'm going to say, because you're right. There's no cuts. It's black and white. Like it was wrong. But I will say, so the one I'm going to mention first, isn't like that. Like you could apologize for it through cut. You could say it's cuts that explain it. But it was so stark. I thought it actually confused me when I was watching the movie, even originally and in the and in the rewatch. So at the end, when he comes back, he sets it up so he's going to come back 10 minutes early before Doc Brown's death, and the plan gets foiled ostensibly by the fact that the car, I think, won't start yet again. And so it takes him, presumably what we're meant to believe is that it's going to take him time to walk there. And by the time he walks there, Doc Brown is being shot at again. Having said that, the amount of time we see in the movie of that is like 45 seconds or something, not 11 minutes that
right.
So it's really jarring. I wondered for years when I first saw the movie, what happened? Why didn't he get back there in time? And I realized now that the answer is that the car didn't work.
Away.
But it's not perfect about that. Okay, that's number one. Number two, Doc Brown has set it up in the crucial climactic scene, the most important scene in the movie, where Marty's going to go back to the future. He set up exactly 11 seconds. You start the car, and that's when you'll get there at exactly the right moment. It has to be exactly the right moment, but the car doesn't start, and it takes a couple seconds for Marty to hit it. So he should be a couple seconds late, but miraculously he's not.
Right.
I don't know if you've got an
he accelerated fast enough or something.
Whatever.
He took the acceleration into account in the calculations.
No, I know,
right.
but
This
like
is
if he had accelerated just a little bit faster, then Doc Brown was
just a little bit faster to time it perfectly with a
make up those
strike.
2 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay,
Boom,
2.071 seconds. It's a lightning strike. I don't know. Okay,
right.
Your average lightning
Oh,
strike.
and with the slowest moving electricity ever. Did you guys notice that? You could watch it.
I am in for that. Christine, you're so right. I thought of that, but I am on board. I'm glad they did it unrealistically because it was so cool. It looked so good to see the light coming down. And I'm just going to tell myself they slow motioned it. You know, it was.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
I like it.
It looked so good.
What was the third one?
Thank you for asking. Here's the third one. This one is really kind of weak on my part to mention. This is like, but actually, I don't. But look, okay. Doc Brown says when he's introducing Marty to the time machine, you could go back and see whatever event you want. Like you could set it for July 4th, 1776 and see the signing of the Declaration of Independence. You could say, 00 December 25th and see the birth of Christ. Now, let's leave aside the issue of whether Jesus was actually.
Right. We don't need to have that.
I'm leaving that aside, but that's not the point I want to make. Here's the point I want to make. The time machine transports you in time, but not in space. You could not see the signing of the Declaration of Independence or Jesus' birth unless you gave yourself much more time to get over where they were going to be. Exactly.
Okay. I've had this conversation before. The Earth is rotating at 1,000 miles an hour. It's going around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour.
Yep.
The sun is moving through the galaxy. The galaxy is moving away, and so like, and when you start to talk about like space time, when and where become a really hard thing to pin down.
Right. Absolutely. You need like extremely advanced mathematics and physics to get that.
Right. Taking into account the rotation of Earth and everything. And you're going to nail it down to the millimeter. I'm sorry.
But even if you suspend disbelief to say that everything's going to be the way the movie says it is, and you're going to transport yourself to this date in this place on the globe.
Right.
Even if you did that, it still wouldn't work because you just said it earlier.
Right. You're still in the parking lot or whenever.
Right.
Yeah. And thank you, Steven. Like, that makes me so happy because that was a point that I wanted to make, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be like too esoteric.
Oh no.
I'm so glad.
You start talking math and science on this channel, we're just like,
fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's wonderful.
I mean,
so are we going to discuss? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nessie.
Oh, go ahead. No, this was a movie that set the ground rules to how time travel works. Okay.
Except that it's totally wrong.
Right. So that's what I wanted to discuss. Is like how this time travel works. Because you can have two kinds, right? Yeah. You've got the closed time loop, which I talked about with these inventions that, happened from the past to the future to the past to the future. And then there's open loop time travel where you can actually change the future by going to the past.
Which they did.
And of course, they've got both in there, which does not work.
Right. It's either the closed loop or the mini worlds.
Right.
And they try to have their cake
one
and
or the other. You can't have both.
Right.
Except they did.
Wasn't it weird was it weird to anybody else? But, at the end when Marty's looking at the picture and his parents kiss and then everything he looks at the picture and he sees himself and his siblings. Why doesn't he see the siblings as they're going to be, as opposed to how they were?
Because they're on vacation.
They should have had slightly different.
Because we had a different future to look forward to. That would have given it away.
But maybe the kiss hadn't happened yet, right? Isn't he looking at the picture?
Oh no, the kiss.
The kiss is what brought it all back.
His brother and sister.
Yeah, just brought it back.
Oh, you're saying when they bring it back, they should be. They should look different. They should look like they would. Oh, that's a great point. That's a fantastic point.
Yeah,
totally that's another loop, right?
Yeah.
We need to talk a lot about what we're talking about now, and I think we need to try to lay it out in really simple terms, because I think that I myself didn't know anything about this stuff until really when I watched Game of Thrones. I think a lot of people, so some people watch a lot of fantasy. They understand that everything you guys are talking about, what closed loop and open loop are with time travel, what's going on here. Not me, and I think a lot of people also, their only exposure to time travel was Back to the Future. And so so I just thought that this is how time travel always is in fiction, the way Back to the Future depicts it, when in fact it's never like this in fiction because it doesn't make any sense this way.
Right.
To quote the fantastic Paul Rudd as Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, you mean Back to the Future is a bunch of bullshit?
Yep. Yes, that's exactly what we mean.
So to anyone who's not, really familiar with this, I can explain a little bit, and then maybe you guys could sort of explain more perfectly. When I watched Game of Thrones and I saw the famous Hold the Door episode with Hodor, I thought it was amazing and mind-blowing, but I didn't understand how it could work because I thought time travel only works the way Back to the Future shows it. No, in Game of Thrones, the closed loop way. I think that's the closed loop way.
That's the closed
Yes.
loop.
Mhm.
It
Where
already happened.
Where you
It
go back
always
and
happened.
Yes.
it couldn't have happened any other way.
That's the thing.
And that's
The
why the
fact-
future is the way
right.
it is.
the fact that you're going to change the past means that you've already changed the past.
Mhm.
Right.
And so any future you
Right.
see incorporates what has already happened with going back.
Right.
And even and it's weird because weird to a watcher of Back to the Future because, if you made Back to the Future that way with a closed loop, the beginning of the movie in 1985 would be all of the family being all rich and everything like they are at the end. The fact that Marty's going to go back and change the past means he's already changed the past, so you would never have any state of affairs that was different from what it's
Right.
going to be. That's the closed loop, and that's the most common way to do it. Back to the Future does it in this different way, this open loop way. Okay, now you guys take away any more of the description of this.
Okay, so that is the closed loop, and then you've got the mini worlds, which is the moment you make a change, everything, every knock on from that moment, and becoming will be different, and becoming more and
It's
more
a
and
new
more different
timeline.
as time goes on.
Yeah,
Down to the fact
That's
that
the Loki version.
he will never be born because the moment he changes the existence of Marty and both of his siblings in both timelines suggests that his parents had sex at the exact same time in the exact same way in all timelines, which is
So the exact same sperm came to the egg. And,
exactly
yeah.
like
What
all
are
of
the
it.
chances?
But then then something else is different. So yeah, it is sort of both trying to
Yeah.
happen at once.
It would have been
Great
funny
for
if he'd
story.
come back and there had been like an extra sibling there or something that he'd
What?
never met.
Okay, he says Back to the
this is a
Future
good
is only
question.
mini worlds, but the thing is, all the different mini worlds should be more different than than these two are.
Right.
Like, he and his siblings should not exist.
Right.
Exactly.
Or would be different people or yeah.
Exactly right. And it's
Yeah,
not even the butterfly effect because this is not a butterfly but an elephant stomping around everywhere. He's changing so much. So just to go through it again in case some people probably are fluent in this, they already understand that they're like boring. I know all this, right? But other people might be like I would be and be like, what the hell are they talking about? So just to what Steven's saying is. This isn't really the many worlds thing because the many worlds thing would be Marty goes back and the first world is the same. The stuff we see at the beginning, that's fine. But when we get back to the end, to the end of the movie would not be all these kids who are basically the same people as they were in the beginning. They wouldn't exist. They'd be totally different people. It might be that they have 5 children, or they have no children, or the children who they have or are both boys or both girls,
Right.
or there's completely
So
different people.
So it has to be a totally new timeline where
Mhm.
where
When you make that many changes to the past, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh God.
Right. But they kissed, so it's all fine.
Because
Right.
he's not only changing
Well,
his family, every
as Potter-
person that he touches, every path that he crosses with, they're
Mhm.
set on a new course. Just like meteors or whatever breaking off and going out, and they change. It's just like a scatter effect.
Okay, JP
Right.
is telling me that there are no changes to the past. There
And that's-
are
There have to be, because in the beginning they talk about how they met at the dance and how they met before the dance, and when
Okay.
Marty goes back, it's all different because
It was all he said.
him with the car and not George, and all of this stuff happens that didn't ever happen before, like Biff getting challenged and stuff like that, whereas
So,
he never got
when you
challenged
say-
in the other
When
one.
you say it was all done in the future, like, are you talking about from the standpoint? Okay, in actual 1955, Marty was never there. So I don't understand where he went then. If he didn't go to actual 1955, where did he go?
Well, maybe in the timeline that was originally you know, this one is, and see, this is why open loop doesn't work.
Yeah, okay. He created a new. That's the mini worlds. But
yes, in his future, I see what you're talking about now.
But everything that's knock on from that should be different from anything that Marty experienced in his previous 1985 and the 1955 to 1985 of that universe, because it is completely detached from it now. Like, if you want to get technical, it's in a different quantum phase state. And like the fact that they should not even have children who are the same people. They should have different number of children with different genetic makeup. Because, as you say, there's what, 250,000 sperm in the average, you know, whatever, or something like that. And it's just one that gets through, and every one of those is a different person eventually. So, like.
So, and the other thing, when the original comment about how the whole thing is open loop as opposed to closed loop. So when I was talking about the closed loop things where the past does the future and the future does the past and back and forth like that, that could be an open time loop. Like, say, in the original 1955, which in the beginning of the movie they were reminiscing about, you know, Marty was never there. So Marty could not have invented skateboarding. He could not have invented Johnny Be Good and all of that. So yes and no. But they got him on today.
Yeah. Sorry, John. Sorry. Look, here's the thing. The people want the truth.
Right.
And the truth is, this is trying to take the two most popular theories of time travel, the closed loop theory and the mini worlds theory, and make them one thing. And
I'll channel John here, though, because I agree with him. Like, I think everything we're saying here is, I'm glad we're saying it. It is right. It is valuable to talk about. But suppose the makers of the movie understood all the stuff that we're talking about now and still decided to make it this way. I think that would be absolutely the right decision. I think this was a fantastic movie. It could only be made this way. And even though it doesn't make sense, that's for the best, because, like, if you made it make sense, it wouldn't have been as good a movie.
Right. Like,
it would have seemed really random.
I'm sorry, what was that, Christine?
Oh, it would have seemed really random, all of the changes and stuff, because there was no explanation for how, say, the siblings were all different or whatever when you got to the future again.
Just don't ask.
Like, that brings me back to, like, the premise is ridiculous, the science is terrible, but the storytelling is nearly perfect.
Right.
And it's not trying to be scientific exactly. Right. You know, it's not trying to present a well-oiled theory of actual time travel. It's trying to tell a great story, and at that, it does an extremely good job.
Yeah.
It does. Steven, do you want to do the mid-roll?
Yeah, I do. Why? Okay. Do you want to do the mid-roll?
Why do I want to do the mid-roll?
Yeah, take it away, Christine.
Well, I don't know what you've got going on.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do the mid-roll real quick. So thanks, everyone, for being here. Make sure you hit the like and the subscribe. I don't remember to ever say that until it's like been an hour. But, you know, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button. We're this close to 700. It would be awesome if we made it. Come back next week. I don't know what for. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Come back next week. We'll talk something. But 2 weeks from this week is we will be discussing the final season of the Clone Wars. We will be finishing up our Clone Wars coverage, and then not long after that, starting our Star Wars Rebels animated series coverage. So more Star Wars animated. Nessie, what have you got coming up?
Nothing.
What did you do yesterday?
Oh, what did I do yesterday? Oh, I had to empty out, well, my family and I. It wasn't me, obviously. I mean, I was there, but we emptied out the kitchen because we're having major construction work done on this place. So
Huge
yeah,
dream.
been moving all weekend into boxes and moving it out
That's
of the
why
house.
that is why you weren't on John's stream last night.
That's
John
why
did
I
a
was
really, my other co-host who is not on here, this guy right here, J Dubs, John Webster Film. He had a fantastic stream yesterday about the film Amadeus.
And I am just sad beyond measure that I had to miss it because I was
like it's in the way sometimes.
Yeah, I wanted to be there and I couldn't. That made me sad. I need to rewatch it.
Well,
I know how much this film means to John, and it just really made me sad that I wasn't a part of it.
He had
Great Kitty,
AK from AK Watch, Lauren from Shakes the Throne, and our good mutual friend Laura P. were all on to talk about Amadeus, and it was great. Bronty, you got anything going on?
No, I have written some stuff analyzing the symbolism in A Song of Ice and Fire, the books on which Game of Thrones is based. They're on a website called Red Mice at Play, and I, in the past, have made some videos. Indeed, in videos way back when that included Steven, talking about Game of Thrones on a YouTube channel, and I hope and believe that I will make more. I've still, spent a lot of time, but I still spend a lot of time studying that stuff, and I have things to say. So I maybe someday I'll say them and put them on the YouTube channel.
You should. I think you should. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nessie,
Had a
what's
request.
his name?
This is Morel. I am her emotional support human. Yes.
I love it.
When I'm in here streaming or whatever, she has to be right here. She's got a little stool with a pillow and a blanket, and she's always right here.
That's awesome. That's
So,
very vocal kitty.
Christine, what do you got cooking over in your neck of the woods?
So I do a podcast called the Nevernever Podcast, which is based on, it's discussing much in the same way that many YouTubers do with Song of Ice and Fire. I am discussing the Dresden Files, which is one of my favorite book series of all time. It's a guilty pleasure because it's like super fun and fast paced and whatnot, but it's also got a lot of really deep concepts in it, and that's what I like to talk about. So we are in the middle of Full Moon, which is book 2, and I owe my audience episode 13, but I haven't been able to work on it for a little while because of school starting up, which I know a lot of people start in late August or September. In Arizona, school starts like the very beginning of August. And so my 3 kids are all starting school either at a new school or completely new, because I've got a guy who's starting kindergarten this year. And so, yeah, I've been a little busy with life, and I don't have episode 13 in the pipeline anytime super soon, but it should be a couple of weeks before we get that out. So.
Okay, so hopefully a new episode coming soon.
Yes. Yeah.
But boy, do I understand. Like, I don't have kids living at home with me anymore, so I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Which is good because
it's a pain in the ass is what it is.
Yeah. A lot of them can hear me talking right now. Yeah, because they're a pain in the ass. Okay, so, but everybody's links are also down in the description. If you want to follow these fine folks on Twitter or what have you, you can find those links down in the description. Also, we need to make sure we shout out our patrons. Our Patreon High Council consists of our alpha patron, Ridiculous Ed Tollett, this guy right here, Buddy, drive home safe.
About time.
Be careful. I know this is usually your time to get off work. Also, this fellow right here, Sixto Sounds, aka JP the Axe Grinder, good buddy from my local area, and also this guy right here, Lord John Bronstein the Wise. and they are accompanied by the lords and ladies of the realm, including Lady Leaf Underhill, Ryan Stavka, the Russian quartermaster, and Reflective Rambling. So
Yay
thanks
for
to our
patrons.
thank you, patrons. We love you guys. Probably going to get a Here Be Dragons Zoom account, paid Zoom account, so that we can just Zoom whenever we want, and I can give host duties to whoever I want. And Patreon's going to help going to pay for that. So thanks, guys. We love you. Here Be Con.
It's a thing, y'all.
It's a thing. A couple of people have canceled. So I said last week was your last chance. It's not technically your last chance. If somebody listening to this wants to come hang out with us in late October and you can find a way to get here, you need to get with me. You can send an email to we3dragons@gmail.com. I'll get back with you and talk to you about what's needed. We're having our own mini convention. We had reached capacity, but a few people had to pull out. So I've got a spot or two open for if somebody desperately wants to come join us. It would be great. I will be there. Nessie will be there. Mr. Bronstein will be there. Unfortunately, Christine with the 3 kids, not going to make it.
Ooh.
But, we'll try to have fun even though you're not there. We'll try. So, yeah. And what else? I don't know. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Very well then.
I'm
Back
trying
to the future.
Back to the future. Yeah.
Okay. Great Scott, what a movie.
Great Scott, Marty. Yeah, I
this is
hear
heavy.
that a lot. I mean, the movie is super quotable, but what about the soundtrack, guys? This was during the age when, rock and roll soundtracks and made for movies.
Okay, but there was a good bit of like orchestral score in this as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dun, 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 dun. And like even I was noticing it like there are small musical hints in things like we see Doc lying there and his eyes open towards the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
He's been shot and he looks like he's dead, but then like he blinks and there's this really subtle tinkling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a playful sound, which really adds to that character because there's a lot of that sort of playful music over a lot of his more physical comedy stuff,
Yeah,
Definitely.
kind of like little pixie dust or whatever. It's like, okay, sprinkle, sprinkle, something's different. It's not what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Nice.
for sure. And the orchestral music that you were talking about.
I'm sorry, that is a great crossover reference.
I'm also glad that you put a reference to John up while we were talking about the music, because one of the ways in which John Webster has enriched my life is by making me aware of the importance of music in movies. I didn't think there was always a huge part of the movies that I loved, but I just didn't. I wasn't aware of it. I didn't think about that, and now I do. And it's so true. I was thinking about it and watching this, just like you said, Steven. That theme that you were singing a few bars of is the theme they play, the orchestral theme they play when he goes back to the future. But also, I think also when there's this moment where he sort of defeats Biff and the gang in the skateboarding scene where he climbs over the car. Yeah. It's so exciting. It's so exciting. Yeah. And those
like
are some of
Marty's
the
hero theme. Like every time he does the time travel, every time he gets one up on Biff, every time. Yeah, it's right there.
Marty's theme.
Right, exactly. And it's thrilling, and those are some of the signature moments of the movie. The time travel, and some of the things that people most associate with the movie, some of the most exciting, best scenes in the movie. It's probably also there at the beginning when he goes back to the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when he evades the Libyans who are trying to kill him. That's very exciting, by the way. You know,
yeah, it cuts in the middle. It's like dun 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 dun, and like all of a sudden he's driving through this field with stuff hitting him.
Yeah.
It's like it's back and forth with the accelerator. You know, as the car is accelerating, the music gets louder. Like we're almost made it to 80.
Right.
You know, hit it to the no, back off, and you know.
Yeah. Oh gosh, we got a turn, so we get slower. And...
Earlier, John said he was glad he wasn't on today. How you feel now, buddy? Are you listening over here now?
Yeah.
John jumps on for
John's input on
15 minutes.
The soundtrack for Back to the Future. It is too bad that he's not here.
And we were asked,
I mean, it's orchestral, it's rock and roll, it's what was current in 85, and then, you know, what was brand new for 1955. Music is, I mean, the time jumping with the music as well is very iconic.
Yes. Like, they've got a couple of really great... They've got a really great 1985 song from Huey Lewis and the News. You know, they've got some great 50s music, Mr. Sandman and Ballad of Davy Crockett, and of course Johnny B. Good. Like,
and Earth Angel.
Earth Angel.
Yeah.
The love song.
Yeah. I think there are actually two Huey Lewis songs. Obviously, there's Power of Love, but also there's Back in Time.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah. There's two. Yeah, absolutely.
Who did the Power of Love?
Huey Lewis.
Is that them too? Okay.
Yeah, Huey Lewis and the News.
Nice.
I think Huey Lewis may actually be in the movie in a cameo.
Yeah. Commented earlier. He's the guy who turns Marty down for the band.
He's just too darn loud. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was so cool.
Yeah,
I forget who said that, but hats off. For
people who don't know what we're talking about, Marty is a musician, as we see at the end of the movie. And when he has to play so that they kiss in the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. But in the beginning, he does this tryout, he and his band, to get to play in the school dance or something.
Talent competition.
Yeah, and they do all this stuff, and they're actually starting to play Power of Love, I think. And the three teachers or whoever who are deciding it stop him right from the start and are like, "You're just too darn loud."
Yeah,
it's such a cold, terrible rejection. But also so funny because of all the things to say. That's what they say.
Yeah, it's like turn it down a notch or two. Like volume is not something you can control.
Yeah.
And I will say this too. Like Marty is a very talented guitar player, but I wouldn't want him in my band.
No, he goes
too much showboating, man. Too much
showboat. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He gets lost in the moment and just can't stick with it, you know?
I mean, iconic 80s hair band 10-minute guitar solo.
Yep.
You know, just like
yep. Absolutely.
All behind the head. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about when he gets hit, when Marty gets hit by the car?
Yeah, but like we were at, Isabel asked me, are we going to talk about the other films? And to be honest with you, I hadn't planned on it.
Yeah.
I think a 2-hour conversation about this film, we could just get away with 2 hours on this one movie.
This was the best one. I mean,
it just sets me up it gives me option for 2 more streams later on. So
right, exactly. Number 3 was definitely my favorite of the sequels, because number 2 was kind of a little bit subpar, you know.
I unapologetically love number 2 still.
Oh, that's
the
fine.
weakest. It is the weakest, but like there are parts of it that are the best.
Yeah, it's got a lot of good callbacks too.
Like Marty running around in 1985, watching himself when he was originally running around in Marty going back to 55 and seeing his other 1955 self. Like
running around.
So good. Sorry, I love it.
Yeah.
But
he saw his 85 self in 85 in the first movie, Ronald, whatever. Yeah. So it's a cool little trilogy they set up, it was worth going back. It was worth watching.
Yeah, for sure.
I paid my $10 and saw it in the theater. But what a weird and convoluted
what a different movie it would be if it was Celine Dion's Power of Love. Instead of Huey Lewis's The Power of Love. That is fantastic. Thank you for that, Aaron. You made my day.
Thank you, Aaron. We love you.
Wonderful.
But what a weird and convoluted hero's journey Marty McFly has to go on.
It is.
And he's got his little wizard along the way to help him and guide him. It's kind of cool. It's throwing that little hero's journey fantasy element in. He has to go back to save himself and his, be like someone mentioned in the chat, become the father to his father, so his father can be a father. I don't know, better dad. Yeah. I'm my own grandpa. I don't know how this works, but somehow, the paying it off, the words of wisdom along the way to, he learns from himself.
Yeah.
I don't know how this works, but yeah. And, it's kind of weird and cool, but it's still there. The hero's journey's still there.
Yeah, for sure. And the weirdness of it, I mean, not that the time travel isn't weird. That's definitely a singular sort of thing. But the weird part of it for Marty starts when he gets hit by the car. That's when everything goes wrong.
When it gets weird,
Yeah. And of course, he's just trying to save his dad. He doesn't think about, oh, wait, this is how they meet. He's going to be okay. But yeah, he's just trying to save his dad. And
right.
Yeah, it's just cute. So, the guy, I guess Marty's grandfather, the dad of Lorraine, says, another one of those damn kids jumped in front of my car. Another one. How often does this happen? This is not the first time he's hit a kid with his car.
That's a great point.
So, a question then. How many of those did Lorraine try to get to spend the night, though?
I know, right? Maybe that's why it wasn't the first time she'd parked. I don't know. But and then when he wakes up and he's not wearing pants, he's like, "Where are my pants?" And she's like, "On my hope chest." Because she's just hoping that he won't want his pants back. I don't know.
But not only that, why are his pants off?
Exactly, Bronty.
She wanted to.
Yes.
And she had to stare at his underpants long enough to know A, that they're purple, and B, that they've got Calvin Klein written all the way around them.
It is interesting that she took his pants off.
Yeah, for no apparent reason too.
Right, because it's not like the parents had anything to do with it, because as soon as they called her, she was like, "Oh no, put your pants on." Right. So it's obvious she wasn't supposed to have taken them off. But
yeah.
But yeah, that was a good one. And then when he goes down to watch TV and he's like, "Yeah, we've got two of them," and
like,
nobody has two television sets. But yeah, it's
Can we
talk
talking
about reruns?
Can we talk a little bit about Eric Stoltz, Stephen? What do you think about?
Why he's not in this movie?
Well, right, but
okay, he's in like 4 frames of this movie or something like that.
Okay, so but I want to say something about it. So when they conceived of this movie, Michael J. Fox was always the guy they wanted to play Marty McFly. But Michael J. Fox was in Family Ties, the television show, and he couldn't get away to do it. So they instead hired a different actor, Eric Stoltz, a very good young actor of the time who did a lot of other good stuff. And and they started shooting the movie. They made a lot of the movie with Eric Stoltz, and they felt that it wasn't going to work. And they scrapped that, and they offered whatever it took to get Michael J. Fox away from Family Ties to make the movie.
Contract.
And he made the movie. And so I've read a little bit about this. I have some thoughts about that. I want to say one very small thought is it was a Herculean effort by Michael J. Fox, who was shooting two things at once and apparently was dead tired. He just barely slept. I think they may even have carried him sleeping out of the car that dragged him from one place to another into bed, and he was exhausted all the time. And you see how he has to play this character super perky and happy and up all the time, and he just was like that, and then just would immediately fall asleep because he was totally exhausted. But the thing I want to say about it is that so Eric Stoltz apparently thought a lot about what it would actually be like if you were Marty McFly. You see Doc Brown, the closest person to you in the world, get gunned down and murdered, right in front of your eyes. You yourself are very nearly murdered, and then you're trapped before you were born with no one you know in regular life, and it's very unlikely you're ever going to get back. How would you actually feel? Well, you'd probably feel miserable and horrified and scarred and everything, and that's apparently how he played it. In a sense, great acting, very realistic, but it's an example of how if we saw the movie through the eyes of someone who felt that way, we would feel the wrong way in the movie. We would feel scared and unhappy.
But that's not what this movie is.
We'd watch Marty experiencing like PTSD during some of it.
For the movie to work the way it's supposed to on its terms, we're supposed to be feeling wonder and awe and happiness and excitement, and Michael J. Fox conveys that. So even though from a certain perspective, Eric Stoltz's portrayal is more realistic and sort of very good acting in a certain sense, it wasn't what the movie needed. The movie needed great acting in a different way, a different kind of great acting, less realistic to convey the feel of the movie.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, of course, when he does finally find Doc in 55 and tries to explain the situation to him, he doesn't believe him at all. Ronald Reagan is a president? It's crazy actor guy. I forget who he said. Well, who's the vice president? And he named
Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis.
Great pick for vice president, by the way.
Yep. There you go. What a clue.
Oh, lady. Sorry.
John and Potter are trolling me in the chat because we're all like Fringe fanatics, and the fact that Eric Stoltz stars in the alternate universe version of Back to the Future. So that's how you know you're in the wrong universe. You've crossed over. One of the also that takes the whole multi-universe. That show is great. If you love that kind of stuff, you need to watch it. But that was just one of the many little Easter eggs from that series with Eric Stoltz version.
When I originally tweeted about this, somebody brought up Eric Stoltz in a response to my tweet, and I'm just like Eric. I just can't imagine Eric Stoltz being as likable as Marty ends up being. He's a little punk ass sometimes, but Marty, for the most part, is actually a pretty likable person. Eric Stoltz doesn't do likable very well. But, I think that's a choice he makes as an actor. I'm not trying to say he's a bad actor, but I'm just knowing what I've seen him in, I'm just like, he's not nearly as likable. And to hear it spoken about where he's playing this very serious, dark and somber type of character, it's just, this movie just wouldn't work, especially with the wackiness of Doc Brown juxtaposed against that.
Yeah,
I can't imagine. Yeah, I can't imagine that coming off in some kind of complimentary way.
So it was a dark B movie in the red multiverse of Fringe. So there is a universe where Eric Stoltz was the star, and it's
probably several.
Yeah,
several. Yeah.
Where Marty where Michael J. Fox just couldn't get away, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's stuck.
They had to do with Eric Stoltz. But
stayed
love
on
the-
growing pains, became a failed child actor.
oh dear.
Yeah. sad child actor. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that Doc Brown, when he finally believes Marty, he says something that just, again, this is kind of like, another kid with my car. He says he finally invented something that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how are you known as an inventor if you've literally never invented something that worked? I don't understand that. I mean, maybe he's just self-professed, like somebody comes and talks to him.
Well,
like, what do you do? I'm an inventor.
You can be an inventor and you're improving on existing technology.
True.
So it's probably more like I made something new that worked.
But it could also just be that that it's just like you said, that he's a self-professed inventor, because clearly I think that's why they let us know that that his family was very wealthy, right? He even says at one point, I think, I spent the whole family fortune on this.
Look at the house he lives in when Marty rolls up on him in 1955.
Ooh, yeah.
Huge.
It's swank. It's a swank house. Oh, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but the two pictures in the beginning of Thomas Edison and Ben Franklin are up on the mantle with two more. You've got Isaac Newton, and they're all in chronological order, right? So you've got Isaac Newton, and then Ben Franklin, and then Thomas Edison, and then the last one is Einstein, which of course he named the dog Einstein. Yeah, he's very obviously a science nerd.
Yeah, his other dog is Copernicus.
Copernicus, there you go. Yeah,
he was a little further down the way,
right
on the mantle. Yeah,
right.
But he borrows a lot, like in the opening scene where you see like this mechanical breakfast making device. He's taking care of the dog and his breakfast and what have you. That I just immediately, it was a callback to me from I think it was a Disney movie. No, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, where you've got this eccentric inventor. The opening scene of that movie is him having this elaborate cog and wheel device that makes his breakfast for him in the morning. It's like overcomplicating something so simple, but that's kind of how the inventor's wheel, his Doc Brown's wheel, works or whatever. So this was like an homage to that, all of those prior black and white movies where you see them, the nutty professor, or the eccentric tinkerer, inventor.
Right. So the reason I said science fair, when I was a kid at one of my elementary school science fairs, I think one of the fifth graders' parents built an automatic dog food feeder for them for the science fair. And for some reason that machine just stuck in my head so vividly. And whenever I saw Back to the Future, the two were always linked in my head, like science fairs and that particular type of crazy machine.
Yeah, but somehow it's exactly 25 minutes late also.
Yeah.
Like, your experiment was for it to be late? Like, I don't know. I
got nothing.
I got nothing.
I end up saying that a lot with Doc Brown, though, which is probably one of the reasons he's such a character that works so well. I mean, he is a caricature of the mad scientist archetype.
Absolutely.
Much so.
But like Christopher Lloyd's delivery with his, or his,
nobody else could have done that.
No.
Absolutely nobody.
Yeah. And like he's got all the best lines. He's got like
well, I don't know. He wasn't the one that said make like a tree and get out of here.
Okay.
That is absolutely iconic.
That's a great line, but like or like please excuse this model. It's not the scale. And it's
So
like
we didn't
this
have time to paint
perfect
it.
representation of the.
Right. It's not
Yeah.
exactly to scale.
Almost a perfect. I wonder if he had some of that originally anyway. Like if he had the town all built out, right? Yeah,
Oh, that's
Yes,
interesting.
he did.
from other inventions that he was going to try and make en
All
masse for the
mad
town.
scientists have models of all of the local towns,
Right.
you know, where they're running their experiments.
Stephen, you're the right person for me to ask this to. I've always wondered, what does he mean when he says it's not to scale? Does he mean it's not literally the size of the actual, or does he mean that so what he means is
The
that
ratio.
that's right, the ratio.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's interesting because you would think I think that I'm not sure the people who made the movie knew that. You would think the ratio might actually, first of all, you'd think he might get it right, and that it might be important, especially for the cord going down.
Right. Yeah, which
Here's the
turned out to
thing.
be true. They should have given it just a little bit more slack so that
Yeah.
that wasn't
Here's
quite
the thing,
such
though,
an
like-
issue.
The joke is it's actually an extremely good model.
Oh, for sure. No, I get that. I totally get that. But I'm
And-
saying, like, it does seem like it might be to scale in terms of the ratio being right.
It's probably not perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But
Well,
like,
I mean, because if you
but
look
he's-
at the car that they use, it's way big. It's like compared, it's almost the
Oh.
size of some of the buildings. And
You're right.
that
You're
kind
right.
of thing.
Yeah,
if
good
It should have
point.
been like a little tiny Hot Wheels,
Maybe,
And
you
here's
know,
the
he
thing.
was limited by the size of the electric motor he had on hand in the
Right,
workshop.
right.
And
Yeah.
it depends on how precise you want to get. I mean, as somebody who does engineering for work, when you say it is to scale, that means something very specific to me. It doesn't mean close. It means perfect.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway,
So
but-
so then there's a few things that we could talk about where in that dynamic where Lorraine has the hots for Marty, and Marty of course is trying to get him to get her together with George, and like all of the mistakes that he makes in, again, trying to fight for his parents, trying to protect his mom, trying to keep his dad from getting hit by a car. Like he stands up for her, and because that's what a son would do, like
That's
if
what a
he saw
decent
somebody picking
man
on
would
his
do.
mom, he's gonna stand up for her. Only she's got this totally crazy other, notion going on about, how dreamy he is.
He's
For-
so dreamy.
Yeah, he seems to get dreamboat. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
But yeah, so like in the cafeteria, he stands up for her, and then in the diner or the little soda shop again, he
Soda
stands
shop,
up for
yeah.
her, and really, like, surprisingly, because he knows how much bigger Biff is than him, right? And that's probably why he does all these sort of dirty, underhanded things, like tripping him and punching him from, unexpectedly. He's turned around and stuff. But yeah, and every single time he does it, she just falls more and more and more for him, making the situation worse and worse. And the dad comes in and tries to ask her to the dance, and he's got his shirt half tucked, and he's reading from a
I am your
notepad, and
destiny.
he can't get the word
I
destiny
am your
out.
density.
Yes, you're my
And
destiny.
also notice how the scripted lines, even had he said them accurately, were terrible.
Right.
That wasn't going to work anyway.
But I
Right.
will say,
It's way smoother than what he wound up with. though.
I talked about it
Right.
earlier in the stream, but that is the specific scene I'm talking about when I say sometimes I look at him and that is a beautiful man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and we went off about it, but like, I'm just looking at him going, God dang, that's a good looking dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
He's got a little bit of that androgyny thing going on, which is kind of overall attractive to me, but
And she likes him too,
She
even
does.
though she wants Marty, and
He's kind of swayed a little bit.
yeah, she
Like
doesn't.
he says destiny. When he finally gets his words out, and he's all like being dramatic and everything. It's like she
Right.
sees him in that
Yeah.
moment. She sees him.
Yeah, and
her
she's-
eyebrow kind of goes up, like,
Yeah.
really?
Right.
Maybe? Who?
And then she's distracted again. But
Yeah.
in that moment, she sees him.
Yeah, and when Marty tries to pitch to her the idea of her going with George, she says something like, "George is kind of cute, but yeah." So
no dreamboat like you.
right, you can see that the kind of seeds of it are there for their ultimate getting together.
Mm-hmm.
And who's to say she didn't know George was outside her window?
Right.
Right. Maybe he got
wouldn't
a
it be-
free subscription to her OnlyFans.
Wouldn't it be kind of crazy if she did know and she was like kind of performing for him? That would have been interesting.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, look, I'm not here to kink shame anyone.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
what they do is
That's the
great.
thing.
It's the consent that I'm worried about.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that would actually be better. What
It
Christine's
would.
saying
It
would be
would be
better. And it's possible, given Lorraine's character back in 1955, she could have been totally into that.
She was much more forward than she approved of later in life.
right, for her daughter. Right.
Yep.
I would never have done stuff like that.
And even Marty too, because she's ragging on his girlfriend Jennifer.
Oh, you're right.
For being, I don't like that girl. She's not good for you. And
yep.
I would never call a boy.
Calling boys.
That makes me think, like, because we talked about this a little earlier, but when you compare the sort of like original family McFly family to the sort of edited McFly family, I feel like, I don't know the sister's name, but she has the best sort of like overall change. Okay, so Marty's brother isn't working at a McDonald's or whatever, but he is a corporate wage slave in an office. But she's got her pick of guys calling her, and that was, so she like gained ownership of her love life and
right. Well, and Lorraine, her change into the edited family, she's talking one of the first words out of her mouth was, "Oh, are you, you're going on that date to the lake or whatever." And I like that, Jennifer. She's a good girl for you. And so she's much more supportive of her kids and what they want. And I think that, that gave them confidence to be these, more successful people, whether it's successful with the boys or is successful with his career or,
different parenting style.
Yeah, exactly.
But like it's just crazy that that Hollywood shorthand is like, oh, I have an office job and I wear a suit. I'm like, that sounds like a downgrade to me. I don't want to work in an office.
Yeah.
There's no part of me that wants to work in an office and wear a suit.
I can totally understand that.
And if he was really in a better place in his life, he'd get a freaking haircut. Because, my God.
And why is he still living at home with his parents?
That too.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing wrong with living with his parents.
Is it an internship? Maybe it's an unpaid internship. I don't know.
Maybe, but okay.
There's also the kind of obsession for Marty with the truck. That's the symbol of Marty being successful, which is so
what
weird.
What kind of car are you driving?
Yeah, exactly.
It's America in the 80s.
Yeah.
Corporatism and
that was a teenage dream, is what kind of vehicle am I going to have?
Because it's freedom.
Your freedom.
The truck is not what I would expect of Marty. It seems a little discordant. It just, I don't know. I get what you're saying. Him wanting a car and everything. That car though, it's a little surprising.
He wants to go to the lake with his girlfriend.
Is it off road? Is that the thing?
It looks like it is.
It's about the privacy.
It's got a good little lift kit on it.
Tinted windows.
You can throw a mattress in the back.
Ooh.
Look at the stars.
Yeah.
Look at the stars.
He was gonna go to the lake with her in the regular car. So
right, but he lied to his parents about it. He said that he was going with his guy friends.
Buddies,
And,
it's just when they're sitting on the park bench and they're the clock tower ladies there. He sees this brand new, 4-wheel drive
getting towed into the dealership.
Yeah, he's like, that's what we need.
Yeah.
That's what we daggum if it didn't show up in his garage.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Chekhov's truck.
Yes, there
Chekhov's
you
truck
go.
is
There you
right
go.
there.
Oh,
Yes, you knew
man.
who the delivery was.
It's his Rosie. Like Sam from Lord of the Rings. At the end, he gets to marry Rosie.
Oh,
The truck is his Marty's Rosie.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of cars, I just want to say, deep into the idea, them creating this movie, the script and everything, they had not thought of the time machine being something that was going to move. It was going to be something stationary, like a refrigerator. I think it was literally going to be a refrigerator. And Steven Spielberg ruled that out because he thought that kids would watch the movie and they'd go into the refrigerator and die.
Oh, no.
But
it can be a phone
get into
booth.
a car and drive 88 miles an hour.
well, right. But wait, what did you say, Nessie? Oh, I
said it can be a phone booth.
Could be a phone booth. Well, right. Phone booths have a rich tradition.
Yeah, phone booths are taken, though. Phone booths are taken.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
But
You could
to
do
me,
a refrigerator.
the DeLorean was such a great part of the movie. It was so
Right.
exciting to see it with the sort of flaming skid marks, when it's gone. And so that was so thrilling, and it creates the final climactic moment of the movie with the lightning and everything. So it thank goodness they figured that part of it out, because I think it would have been a much less good movie otherwise.
Yeah, the
Without
movement of
the
the time machine made it like a much more dynamic thing, made time travel a much more dynamic thing, and therefore, infinitely more interesting. So, yeah, I totally agree with that choice. And then the fact that they made it a DeLorean, that was, the little like doors.
The DeLorean was like the Tesla of its day. It's like this futuristic, this weird guys out there just making these crazy, car designs. You had the whole scoop wing doors. It was very futuristic looking, and then to just tie that right in, like, this is time travel, baby. It's so it was like that window, that tiny little window into 1985, where it just all came together. Perfect. Mm-hmm. They couldn't have chosen a better vehicle for that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Did you guys catch the tiny little line where Marty sees Doc Brown in the radiation suit and says, "Is that a Devo suit?" I had to look it up. Yeah.
I didn't. I did not catch that. That is hilarious.
When the problem comes along, you must whip it.
Whip it good. So, yeah. Was there any other particular topics that you guys wanted to touch on, or any moments that you guys...
I've said most of what I want to say.
I wondered because we haven't there's that horrible Biff elephant in the room with the nasty assault.
Yeah.
That he, what a downer, but still it's there, and we shouldn't not acknowledge it.
Well, it's clearly played as being a bad thing. It's not, but yeah, it's tough. It is the most unpleasant part of the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And it kind of makes that moment in the beginning of the film where Biff is having that exchange with Lorraine and just look like looking good, Lorraine.
Yeah, say hi to your mom for me.
Gross.
Kind of just extra icky.
Yeah.
Knowing that.
Oh, that's such a good point. Yeah, exactly.
He was always hitting on Lorraine. He was always after her. Just inappropriate touching. Just not taking.
You guys notice that he did that in the cafeteria of the school?
The cafeteria of the school, in the malt shop, in any public space, any space. If she was there, he was being inappropriate with her.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you pointed out that theme, because you're right. It's there over and over again in 85 and 55.
Going on.
Right, for 30 years. Right, yeah, exactly. And Steven is right that they do depict all of that very negatively. Obviously, Biff is the villain of the movie. Right. One thing that was interesting to me is, how do we feel about the fact that Marty was planning to do that. I mean, yeah,
Right.
No, I don't think he was planning
As
on
an
doing that.
act.
of course, no,
But
of course.
still.
Yeah.
But still, that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like Christine says, but still, it was going to have to go far enough for the plan to work for George to,
Yeah.
save
Right.
Lorraine. Yeah,
Yeah, because she needed to be saved from something.
exactly.
So, yeah, and he's just like, oh, I can't do this. This is
Well,
wrong.
here's the thing. Like, I don't think he would. He thought he would just have to push a little bit, and she would reject him. The real problem arose in that she came on to him,
Right.
and so he.
And
By the
yeah,
time
he was not prepared for that.
Right. So I don't think he was expecting to have to do very much, because she always talked about how I never did that with a boy.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what he's coming into that expecting, to just like lean in and try to kiss her, and that's going to be too much for her.
Right.
Clearly, that wasn't the case.
Right. She brings out the flask and the cigarette and all the, God, you sound like my mother. Like,
Right. Just sitting there. He's like, do you mind if we sit here and park for a while? Like, they're in a parking lot, okay? So you're just there outside the school or whatever, but
right.
just the parking part, because his mom said, no, I would have, was not.
Mhm. Right. He denies that she would ever
specifically said
do.
that wasn't something. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
he thought, well, this will be enough. I'll just ask her if she wants to do this, and she'll be so offended,
Yeah.
that she'll like smack him or run off, and his dad will be there to save the day, and
Yeah.
whatever.
And of
But-
course, he was there to save the day, even though it was like, oh, it's this horrifying person that
I know.
don't even want to
I
stand
know
up
that.
to.
Yeah, that part of the storytelling works great. But I don't know how much we can let Marty or the filmmakers off the hook a little bit. Even though, look, I love the film. I'm not looking for
Right.
things to criticize. But if you think about it, it's not going to be with Marty's original plan. It's not going to be enough for him to just suggest it, because he's got to not take no for an answer in order for the plan to work at all. That is the
Right.
plan, and
Right.
not taking no for an answer is the problem.
I've got to say though, I was not like a teenager in the 80s. I was a teenager in the 90s, but I remember from media and television and all that stuff where like this kind of thing was like not uncommon in movies and whatnot, where the guy is coming on way too strong, and these days we would call it some much more just
it's
disparaging
harassment,
terms.
if not assault.
Right, absolutely. And so in 1985, when the movie was 84, 85, when the movie was made and released, it was just it wasn't the big deal that it is now. And that's part of why that whole movement was so important, because it did not used to be a thing that people cared about. And so you take it in context of the time, and especially they're talking about back in the 50s when women had like no rights whatsoever, and everybody blamed her for him wanting her and things like that. Right. So yeah,
it was. There's a couple things I want to make sure I say. First of all, I got a friend. He's a patron, Ryan Stavka, the Russian quartermaster. He sent me a DM on Twitter just now saying, look at these youngsters talking about something that came out when we were kids. And I had to tell him, dude, they're all around my age, or, within 10 years of my age. And he's like, they don't look it so. So he thinks you are all holding up very well. Just wanted to let you know that.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The fact that, it's the times makes me, and I'm not really a big fan of this for most films, but it makes me want to see a remake of this movie where they go from 2021 to 1991 and back, or something along those lines.
That would be interesting.
Like, just to see, like, and again, I'm not a big fan of the remake per se, but it wouldn't have to be a strict remake. It could be a spiritual sequel or whatever.
But then, of course, the soundtrack would suffer, because instead of like instead of Earth Angel and all
You
of
get
that,
90s
what
music.
great, you get 90s music like the right stuff or something like it would be horrible.
You get Nirvana too, though.
That's true. Well, and not in 91.
Okay,
they didn't
in
come out
91
until,
you
like,
would get
93,
Red Hot Chili Peppers and Metallica and
Yeah,
you know.
no, that's absolutely right. There's plenty of good 80s, 90s music. I'm not saying that there isn't. I just
I was
you
about to
wind
pop
up with
that
the
up. I
popular
was about
songs.
to pop that up.
Celine Dion.
Celine Dion version.
Like, John,
Yeah,
you scream
get it.
no, but like it doesn't do anything bad to the previous one. Like the previous one is always going to be there, and it doesn't need to be about Marty McFly, but just make. I would love to see another version of this type of movie with sort of modern ones, modern sensibilities.
Yeah, I hear you. That would be really interesting. Oh man, where was the other thing?
Actually, you could do it 2015 and 1985, right? To sort of keep. It would be interesting to show what 1985 looks like, looking back, as opposed to what it looked like, in when it was the more recent time.
Okay. So just to fix it, we'll go from 2025 back to 1995. That gets us Alanis Morissette. And like we've grunge has already had its like full blossoming. The alt rock scene is in full swing.
Absolutely. Yep. I like it.
Yeah, John's over here hating it, but like,
I still think you should go back to the 80s.
The 80s would be fun.
Yeah.
Because that was the jumping off point from the original. I mean, Yeah.
You've got because it really is, it's that punch that George, punches Biff and knocks him out. And that's what makes all those changes to the edited family, where you've got, Biff is no longer the big honcho. He's running an auto detailing business and is waxing George's car. And just that one thing, it grows him an instant pair of balls, and it makes it so that everything is just this little bit better for everyone, except maybe the corporate stooge. And now he's sorry, what?
Go ahead.
Oh, just that Lorraine is thin instead of more chunky at the very
come
beginning.
on. She was not even chunky.
No, I don't think so, but she was wearing like a frumpy sweater or something like that. But, because when Marty goes back, he looks at Lorraine in the first place and says, "Oh, wow, you're so thin." And like, as though she weren't before. So, but I agree with you. She wasn't at all.
See, people are hating on my music choices. Like, none of the grunge, none of the alt rock, just pop. I disagree. If I'm making the movie, it's going to have that stuff playing on the radio.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
But and the thing is, he could like go back in time, and he could be a podcaster instead of a musician, just to be more fitting with the modern storytelling. You can go back to 1991 and invent podcasting somehow.
This is what we should use the internet for. Oh man.
I think it was pretty cool that both Marty and George got to knock Biff out. Marty did it first, which kind of showed his dad, hey, it's possible some little guy can do this.
Right.
But, Biff has also been like the ogre in Marty's life his entire life. He's been this big, garrulous guy who just beats down his dad. He's always over there. That was, he could kind of tell, like, here's Biff taking advantage of my dad again. Here he is. He's being this, the bane of his life as well.
Yeah.
So for him to just be, he's knocking out his, dealing with his bully or demon or whatever.
Right.
And his dad at the same time his dad is. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Agreed.
Like everybody's even footing, they're all the same age.
Yeah.
Like if I met you in my 20s, or whatever.
Yeah. The really insidious thing about, the past 1985 as opposed to the new 1985 was that Biff was George's boss. So it's not only that he bullied George, but he also like held agency over this entire family.
Yeah.
Like if George lost his job because he all of a sudden he stood up to Biff, then the whole family is like in jeopardy, financial jeopardy, which they had been not super well off to begin with. So I mean that was just the awful thing about Biff, as though there weren't enough awful things about Biff. It's that mercenary efficiency where you've got literally every line that comes out of his mouth, everything that's spoken about him is just a complete, on a platter. He's a piece of shit, just so you know.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
and again, it comes back to that. Pretty much everyone in this movie is a caricature.
Yeah.
To some degree or other. Some of them are less extreme.
Marty is less extreme.
Marty is less extreme, but he's sort of like the straight man in the comedy.
Right.
Yeah.
The
everyman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, like, this is the best version of Rick and Morty. Like, Rick and Morty is good, but like this is still the best. Like the original and still the best.
Yeah. And my sort of since we're getting towards the end here, I wanted to give my one of my final thoughts was everybody in the world should check out John Mulaney's bit on Back to the Future, because it is absolutely, he's a stand-up comedian and he does a lot of really great stuff, and he even dresses like he's from the 50s, kind of 50s or 60s, and he does this amazing thing about the absurdity of Back to the Future and how the pitch must have gone to the studio. And I recommend it to everyone. So John Mulaney's bit on Back to the Future it's short, but it's really good. I'm not going to quote it. So
yeah, I found a link.
Okay.
I think Steven's looking for a link to it.
I am looking for a link, but then I'm like, I'm failing hard at this.
Oh no.
How do I just say, like, copy the link? You know what? I'll just click this and then I'll. Okay, figured it out. I am smarter than my computer.
Yay!
Yay!
That is a link to the. I mean, I just put in, Back to the Future, John Mulaney. This is the top one, but there you go. There's a link for you. Y'all, that's a 2-hour live stream. Is there anything else we want to bring up before we move to the end? I mean, just anything.
The DeLorean, when it's big reveal out of the truck. Apparently, the truck was completely filled with dry ice in the world, because it opens up and the lights are on and it's just smoke. Billowing out of there, like almost like the end when the band was in their car hotboxing.
Oh man, so good.
Yeah, that was excellent. And then they run off, all of Biff's backup
comes out.
You don't want to mess with a bunch of reefer heads. Oh my
god. Yeah, exactly.
I was like,
what did you call me? Run away.
Those are my people right there.
Yeah. And he's back in the trunk. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we didn't talk at all about race in the movie. There's a little bit where when the mayor, it expressly gets addressed, because the guy who's the boss of the mayor, right? He says that'll never happen. Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's the stuff with the band, right?
Mm-hmm.
The epithet that gets said by one of Biff's friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you wanted to criticize, you could say, little bit like iffy that the movie makes it so that a white guy invents rock and roll and then Chuck Berry ends up hearing it from the white
Chuck
guy.
Berry hears it from him, but he heard it from Chuck Berry.
Okay. Stephen's point.
Stephen's
Stephen's point rescues it, and thank you for saying that, Stephen. So bravo. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because he didn't come up with it. It's not like a song that he wrote. So he learned it from the people who deserve to have. Yeah.
Right. I mean, but it's one of those like, what's the origin of the song then?
There isn't one. That's the crazy closed loop thing.
But again, it's just a silly like. I will say, like, there was a racial slur used in the film.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not one you hear very often. It's one I feel like they thought they could get away with in 1985, and like
right.
But it just
not
shows
say the N-word.
These are trash people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's in 1955 that it said, right? I think. Yeah. But I think the movie is condemning that really clearly, right?
It is.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't use it flippantly. It's said by the bad guys to some cool characters, and then they stand up for themselves. So, that was. I think as tasteful a situation as you can put it in. So
like
they could have left it out.
It's they could have, but like,
arguably it's better not to. You could at least make the case that it's better not to, because they confront the issue of racism and yeah,
for sure.
Like they don't bring it up much, but they do whenever they have a chance. They do condemn it. Yeah. Potter had a great question. If you had a DeLorean but a flux capacitor, what would you punch into the time clock?
Oh wow, I'm stuck with these questions.
I would punch in. No, I can't do that because then my kids wouldn't be born.
Wait a second.
I want to go back to when I was 6 years old and like tell myself a couple of things. So that's like my time travel dream, is to talk to my younger self.
What do you want to say to your younger self?
To my younger self, just because you're smart doesn't mean you're going to figure out everything, and like there's a lot. You'll get way farther in the world by devoting your time and energy to something you believe in and working hard than you will ever get by just trying to rely on being clever. There's several things, but like I also realize that by the time I'm old enough to understand the things I'm saying, I'm too old.
We'll have made those mistakes already.
We've made so many of those mistakes already. Exactly.
Yeah.
So closed loop.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Closed loop. Nice. But like, what do I really go? I really want to travel to the past, to be honest with you. Like, I think overall, now, not everything follows this, but in general, our world has become a more comfortable, peaceful place over time.
Agreed. I think if I had that, I would go visit the future, and I wouldn't go visit my future. I would go like 100 years, 200 years into the future,
or thousands.
Right, maybe, yeah, for sure. But like to see how far technology has come, what kinds of things do we revere now that are total anachronisms in the future?
If you go 1,000 years into the future, you will not understand a single word that is said to you.
Right.
Oh,
right. Which is why I'm like 100, maybe 200.
But at least you could see whether they're, what life looks like.
Yeah. If whether or not we're still here.
I'm not going to go there.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, you'd want to. I'd be curious about.
I think most people are agreeing the future is the way to go.
Yep.
Hopefully.
What about you, Nessie?
Hopefully, maybe.
But even if it's not, even if the future is dystopian or terrible or we don't exist anymore, I'd be interested in seeing that too, just to know.
Absolutely. As long as I could come back.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go forward and find out that we're not here and then just stuck there.
Like number 5.
Odds with you.
Yeah,
Take
Like
the
number
fill-up.
5 from the Umbrella Academy.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Potter's right. It's because they'll all be speaking English.
It would be interesting. There are certain things in the past that might be interesting to see to sort of clear up uncertainty or confusion about what happened, to know the real truth of X, Y, or Z. I don't have them at the top of my, my mind, but I bet there are things that if I thought about it, I'd think, gee, I really wonder how that actually went down. And it would be great to see how it actually went down.
Would.
Yeah.
Why did this happen or that happen? Crucial moments in history that were kind of a fork in the road where life could have gone one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That would be really interesting. Like if the Boston Tea Party had never happened or something like that. Like how did that come about?
Especially if it's like, if we're because the question is, it's a time DeLorean. So we'll come back to the modern world and you'll still exist, but some things will be different.
Right.
At which point I like the baby Hitler argument,
Oh yeah. That's a really, exactly. And also just for the viewing it for sort of academic purposes of like learning what happened, the example they give of Jesus, given that one person had such a giant ripple effect that's still being felt 2,000 years later, be interesting to see like what was his life actually like. And
there's a story about that where there's a time travel like vacation service, and and people want to go see Jesus at the cross, and nobody. If you know your Bible history or your stories from the Bible, nobody speaks on behalf of Jesus, and it's because they're all time travelers on a time travel vacation, and they're not supposed to interact. But it's so popular that literally everyone there is just a tourist.
That's so funny.
Wow.
That is so funny. Oh my goodness. Wow. That is that boggles the brain. Yeah. Or like to go see
destination, huh?
Yeah.
Destination. What the fuck?
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, there's a few places that would be interesting to see, but for the most part, I'm like, I don't have immunity to those diseases. Like, I mean, I have the upside of being a man, at least. For you ladies, every step you go back, it gets harder and harder.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, future would be better, hopefully.
Yeah.
Who is she? Quick, marry her to someone.
Oh, look. Yeah, an unmarried woman. She must belong to somebody. Put an ad in the paper. Have you lost this woman?
Husband wanted. Oh, man.
Okay, so y'all, I think that's a good place to put a bow on this conversation.
Yeah, I like
See
that.
future. Yeah.
So, guys, thanks for joining us, Bronty and Christine. It was a real pleasure having you both back again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Always
for
a
having
pleasure.
me.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was so great to be here.
Yeah. Always a pleasure. Nessie, big sis.
Yeah.
Good times were had. Chat, you guys were on point today. Had a lot of fun. And yeah, great movie. So
Yeah, great choice, Steven. Great choice.
No, this was your choice.
Oh, I thought, well, okay, it was a good choice.
Like we were
take it.
talking, and you were like, "Back to the Future," and I went,
Yes.
Yes.
Indeed.
It's a long time favorite of mine. I love it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I'm really glad I got to watch it again, because you see something so many times and you're like, oh, I don't need to rewatch. I went ahead and rewatched, and I'm really glad I did, because I was able to appreciate it again as its whole, trying to be critical about it. And there were things to be critical about. It's not perfect, but it blew me away again. No wonder it's a classic.
Yeah. For me, it was that point that, like, literally every frame in the movie has, is setting up something or calling back to something, and like everything was interconnected, and it was just it was a really, really well done storytelling in that film.
Yeah.
So that was what I was struck by.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yay.
Well, cool. That's it then. I know nobody has any projects coming up. We'll have something next week. Again, I'm not even sure what right now. I've put a lot of stuff on my plate trying to figure out KirbyCon, but y'all, thanks for coming. It was a blast. I'm stumbling over myself trying to find where the end is, and it's right here. So you know what it is. Until next time, peace. And be excellent to each other.